dear Dr. Michael Barak. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Very good evening. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for inviting me, and I appreciate it. And how are you? How is things in Pakistan?
Everything is good. Everything is going good. Alhamdulillah. Uh, and I hope that things will remain good, especially with the COVID, because it is a big challenge nowadays. Not only my country or your country, the whole world is facing. So we are praying for a peaceful and healthy future for all of the humankind.
Yeah, yeah, inshallah.
And
It's
today,
humanity is experiencing a very tough period in all levels. Yes, also in Israel,
yeah.
but eventually we will overcome this crisis. I hope as soon as it's possible.
Hmm. And when we talk about peace, when we talk about stability, when we talk about future, there is always people who challenge it. And today's podcast topic is about Hezbollah and Hamas.
Yes.
There are different views about Hezbollah and Hamas. People like them, people hate them, people support them, people discourage them. I want to learn about your view, how you see Hezbollah and Hamas, and how they operate and how they uh, make their like their movements or their operations, and what is the whole mechanism. I want to learn it from you.
Okay, it's a huge topic, but we should remember that Hezbollah and Hamas are terrorist organizations. Why is that? Because they have an intention and they are aiming to target civilians. And for Hezbollah, he doesn't all just focusing on Israel, but also he was focusing on Western targets, also in Lebanon in the 80s and in the 90s, for example. He made a very severe terrorist attacks against the Jewish agency in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and many people were killed in this terrorist attack. Hamas is the same thing, launching missiles to Israel, to villages, to cities. Not only that, he also launched missiles to, and also Hezbollah, they launch missiles to and rockets to places where also Muslims live. For example, Hezbollah in 2006, several rockets and missiles fell down on Haifa, where there is a mixture of Jewish and Muslim community. And Hamas also tried to reach Jerusalem, where there is also a mixed population, Jews and Muslims, and also Muslims were damaged by these attacks. So Hezbollah and Hamas are terrorist organizations. They have a very specific target. Goal is to eliminate, and they said it. Hamas said it in his manifesto in 88, that the main target is to eliminate Israel, the Jewish state, and to establish a liberated, to establish a Islamic state, and to liberate Palestine from the Zionism and the Jewish control. And also Hezbollah said that the main goal is to eliminate the Zionist and the Israel state. And it's not surprising. Why is that? Because first of all, Iran, when in the 1979, when Khomeini reached to the power, he declared that the main enemies of Iran and the Muslim nations are United States, the big shaitan, the big Satan, and the small Satan is Israel. So Hezbollah actually is the proxy of Iran. is following the orders of Iran, unfortunately. People thought maybe Hezbollah is a national movement, that it takes care of Lebanese interests, that is trying to preserve an harmony between the different sects in Lebanon, Druses, Christians, Sunni Muslims. People were wrong and found out the truth. I'm not speaking as an Israeli, but also people in the Muslim world discovered that after the Arab Spring, after 2011, when the Syrian civil war erupted, then Nasrallah, the General Secretary of Hezbollah, decided to send Hezbollah troops to fight and to interfere in the civil war in Syria and to fight with Syrian government and to massacre Sunni populations. And why was that? Because Iran commanded to Hezbollah to interfere in this war and to help to Bashar al-Assad. So the Muslim Brothers, which belongs to the Sunni world, when Morsi, the president of Egypt, came to power, he was upset from this. He was upset that Iran interfered in the internal issues of Syria, and then he said to Hamas, are you with us or not? To Hamas, you should be identified and be loyal to your Sunni brothers, and you should cut the ties with Iran and with Hezbollah, because look what they are doing to our brothers in Syria. So Hamas cut his ties with Iran a little bit and with Hezbollah, but in 2007...
Excuse me, Dr. Barak. Here I want to just add a question with excuse. So Hezbollah and Hamas are separate. They don't operate jointly.
Okay, so Hamas, let's say Hezbollah was officially established in 1985, and Hamas was officially established in 1988. Now, Hamas belongs to the Muslim Brotherhood, the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brothers. It was founded by Ahmad Yassin, and Hezbollah was established by the Iranian Islamic Guards in 85. Now, in the end of the 80s, or let's say in the beginning of the 90s, Hezbollah had a chance to strengthen the ties with Hamas. Why is that? Because the Israeli government decided to send to expel some of the Hamas leadership to south of Lebanon, because they were involved in terrorist attacks in Israel. I remember that when I was a kid in elementary schools in the end of the 80s, I remember that also near my city, kids were stabbed by Hamas terrorists, small kids, and we had to learn the Krav Maga in the elementary school to defend ourselves. I think it's only a psychological effect. We could not protect ourselves as small kids, but never mind. But because Hamas was involved in terrorist attacks also against kids and teenagers, the leadership was expelled to south of Lebanon, and there Hezbollah embraced this leadership and strengthened the ties with Hamas. This was a mistake, because eventually a mistake of Israel that expelled them to south of Lebanon, because the ties between Hezbollah and Hamas became stronger. And when some of the leadership of Hamas came back to Gaza Strip and other places, they intensified these ties, and they got a guidance from Hezbollah, for example, how to improve terrorist attacks against Israel. And also the Iranian regime has an interest to support Hamas, not only in Israel, but also other proxies. For example, in Yemen, Iran is supporting the Houthis against Saudi Arabia. Also, Saudi Arabia is suffering from terrorist attacks by the Houthis,
Mm.
and in Iraq also, and now in Syria. So the ties, Hezbollah, has also in one of the commanders in Hezbollah is responsible on Palestinian issues. This guy in Hezbollah command is coordinate and also having talks with Hamas representative, which is found in South Lebanon, and together they are planning how to intensify actions against Israel and how to demonize Israel in different ways. Now, these ties were cut following when Morsi came to power as a president in Egypt. He signaled to Hamas that he did not like the idea that Hamas was in good ties with Iran and with Hezbollah because of the involvement of Iran in Syria, in the massacring the Sunnis. So Hamas diminished the ties with Iran and with Hezbollah, and eventually, when Morsi was overthrown, he fell down from the power. Hamas was left alone a little bit, because why? Because he lost the support of Iran and Hezbollah. I don't know if it was 100%, but it lost most of the support of Iran and Hezbollah. And also Hamas was afraid that now Egypt, under the rule of Abd el-Fattah el-Sisi, will take more strict measures against Hamas, because Hamas was belonged to the Palestinian Muslim Brotherhood movement. So Hamas was afraid that it began to lose power. So in 2017, Hamas published again a new manifesto, which it declared that Hamas was not anymore a branch of the Muslim Brothers, because Hamas was afraid that if it will declare and will be recognized as part of the Muslim Brothers, then Hamas could lose the support of the Egyptian regime, because the Egyptian regime is hostile to the Muslim Brotherhood. And not only that, also Donald Trump, the new president of United States, he also decided to take measures against the Muslim Brothers. And Hamas was afraid that it will lose support. Not only that, it was very weak in diplomatic levels. So they published this new manifesto in order to portray itself as a national resistant movement, while the same goals remain the same. Now, Hamas, for example, I will give you I will compare between the first manifesto to the second manifesto. So in the first manifesto, Hamas declared that it has an open war against the Jews, and it wants to destroy the Israeli state. In the new manifesto, we have to understand the context of the new manifesto. In the new manifesto, Hamas declared that it was not anymore a part of the Muslim Brothers, that Hamas is ready, that Israel will withdraw to the 1967 borders, that Hamas, and this is, by the way, Hamas is in this act was accepting the Jewish state, but this was only a cosmetic change, because in many statements that I watch also Hamas TV, they declare that the main goal to destroy all of Israel remained the same. So only in this manifesto they declare that they were ready to recognize the recognition of Israel in 1967 borders, and that they are not fighting against the Jews, but they were fighting against the Zionists. everybody that is wants that the Israeli state will continue, so they are against him. So this is only a cosmetic change. The real goals remained. Hamas was searching for a good opportunity to improve its position in the world, its image in the eyes of the international community, and also to create a good base to attack Israel. That if Israel will withdraw to 67, then Hamas will become stronger. If somebody watched the Palestinian television of Hamas, this is what they are saying. So I'm not inventing now a conspiracy theories. This is what is found, unfortunately. And also, let's remember that the Palestinian Authority is also as a rift with Hamas. Hamas was trying to overthrow the Palestinian Authority under the leadership of Abu Mazen, also in the West Bank. In Gaza Strip in 2007, Hamas did it successfully when it expelled the Fatah and the other PLO members from Gaza Strip. So Hamas took control of Gaza Strip and became the only ruler in Gaza Strip, and it wants to achieve the same goal also in the West Bank. So Hamas is cooperating with different factors, as I said, like Hezbollah is and after 2017, when Hamas realized that it had to have more financial channels, more financial support, then Hamas decided to renew the relations with Iran and Hezbollah. And today the relations are very good. Today there is a very strong alliance between Hamas and Hezbollah, and Hezbollah and also Hamas said in different occasions that if there will be a third Lebanese war, if there will be a third war with Israel, then they will open a front in the north of Israel and in the south of Israel. Now I will tell you, dear Peer, that Israel, of course, is not interested with this war. If Israel wants, Israel can destroy Gaza Strip in one click. But Israel is not made in this with that stuff. Israel is not had intentions to do that because it's not moral. Of course, it's not the way that Israel behave. So Israel has to speak. Hamas opened channels to speak with Israel, and as you know that there is a Qatari money that is transferred to Gaza Strip. So Israel is open the gates, bring merchandise inside Gaza Strips, gives money from Qatar. So Hamas and Israel are negotiating with each other, but Hamas remained the same terrorist organization. So, by the way, you know that unfortunately, most of the people in Gaza Strip don't like Hamas. I see it also in social media networks. I think that I can estimate that only 23% support Hamas. The Palestinian people realized that in Gaza Strip, I'm speaking, also in the West Bank, but especially in the Gaza Strip, that Hamas actually is a kind of mafia, taking care only for its interest. And many people that spoke against Hamas in social media networks were arrested. Now people say in Gaza Strip that Hamas is taking care only for the interest of the leadership, that they are living in luxury, and they are promoting only the supporters of Hamas. The rate of addiction to drugs are forbidden also in Islam, but the rate of drugs in Gaza Strip is very high. Many young people are addicted to drugs because they are disappointed from Hamas leadership, because they blame Hamas. You don't we finished universities, but you, Hamas, in order to have a sulha, to have a peace with the Palestinian Authority, you prefer to cultivate your own interests instead of the Palestinian nation. And by this, you don't take care for our basic needs. You don't find jobs for us. We finished our universities and we cannot find job. So because of that, there is a big disappointment. Also, the rate of suicide, unfortunately, is increasing in Gaza Strips. Young people are making suicide. It's very sad, it's young people, they have their whole future, and Hamas is holding them like that. And they also Hamas is not letting the Palestinians in Gaza Strip to immigrate from Gaza Strip, to leave Gaza. Only few of them. So the situation in Gaza Strip is very difficult because of this behavior of Hamas. But
so it's kind of human shield, right?
Yes,
they're using population in Gaza as a human shield.
Right. Yes, and also the Palestinian Authority is saying the same thing, that Hamas is keeping the Gazan people as a human shield. That this is it's a humanitarian crisis. So
yeah.
So if we look on Hezbollah in Lebanon, the same things is happening over there. Hezbollah is interested to promote only his own people, and also the Shia. That in Lebanon, there are about 49% Shia. Many Shiis in Lebanon are disappointed from Hezbollah, saying that Hezbollah is only promoting his own people, and because of that, also members of Hezbollah, I watched several movies on that, not fake news. Several members of Hezbollah, they quit Hezbollah. They took their membership card, and they tear it up. They drop it away, said we don't want to be any more members in Hezbollah because he is promoting only a very narrowing interests. And also there is, for example, in Lebanon, there is a very prominent religious scholar, Shi'i, his name is Muhammad El-Amin. And from the 80s, he was criticizing Hezbollah for damaging the Shi'i community in Lebanon, because claiming that Hezbollah is fulfilling the agenda of Iran and not of the Shia community in Lebanon. So, for example, he said that the Wilayat Faqih, I don't, you know what is that? The Wilayat Faqih is is not acceptable. Wilayat Faqih is not acceptable because in this way Hezbollah is fulfilling the Ali Khamenei agenda, and all this is causing a big damage to the Shia communities. So Muhammad Amin, because of this criticism, also by the way, Hassan Fadlallah, one of the spiritual fathers of Hezbollah, was also, when he quit Hezbollah, he said the same thing. But because of this criticism against Hezbollah, these men and others were arrested, and they are going to send to a trial. So Muhammad El-Amin, for example, last year he was in a conference in Bahrain, and the conference was on the subject of how to promote peace between communities, also Christian, Jews, Shia, Sunnis, and Hezbollah decided to arrest him, to Muhammad El-Amin. He said to him, you went to this conference. In this conference, there was a Jewish rabbi, and you spoke with the enemy, so we will send you to a trial. Now, Muhammad El-Amin said, what did I do? What I made wrong? I only I was participating in this conference.
Hmm.
So Hezbollah is very suspicious, and he is ready to arrest anyone and also to assassinate anyone that is suspicious with collaboration with Israel, United States, or other Western state, or Saudi Arabia. Both organizations, Hamas and Hezbollah, already executed a lot of people that, according to them, they were collaborators or were not matching to their agenda.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of things to speak only on this issue.
Means whenever I should fly to Israel, to visit Israel, I should not come via West Bank or Gaza Strip. I should straight directly fly to Israel.
No, the West Bank is fine also, but Israel, yes, of course. Israel, I told you, if when you come, I will take you to see all
Inshallah.
the sites in Israel, inshallah.
So there is a pattern I identified a few years back that just before the month of Ramzan,
But
the
what?
tension just before the month of Ramzan every year,
Huh?
the tension between Hezbollah and Israel, it raises. They start firing missiles, they start sending balloons, they start doing
Ah,
things like that. Because Ramzan is a month when you can collect a hell of money on the name of charity, relief, jihad, anything.
hmm.
So they I saw that pattern very clearly. It is there. If anyone can just go and search the newspaper archive, they can figure out with the model that they start rising the tension just 15 or 13 days, 12 days before Ramzan. And when Ramzan starts, the tension touches the peak of it. So that is a high time to make call for charity, call for money for jihad. And at that time, people are just trying to give away for the sake of course, for the sake of, they think that they are contributing to a good cause. But of course, yesterday we were discussing with some friends, where there is a war, there is a war economy.
Right, it's a
Where there is
business.
a war, yeah, it's a business. It's a modern day business with arms, with a lot of things. Like you are living in a region where you have witnessed the ISIS, their war economy, trade, their trade war, their occupation of countries, and especially the oil field. And someone told me that they are very rich with the gold, by the way. They've gathered hell of gold by selling oil, by selling arms, by looting people. So this all is going on. But can you tell me one thing? I am just failed to understand why Iran is pumping this much money in Hezbollah when they are suffering economically. Iran itself, they are just hardly they are surviving. They have their own problems, problem with health. There are health issues. There are educational issues with the youth. They don't have jobs. They are not getting married. They are like falling in psychological troubles. The whole society is suffering, and they are spending a hell of money in this whole regional game, power based game. Why so?
Yes, you are right. The young people in Iran don't like the idea that Iran is interfering in Iraq, in Syria, in Yemen. They don't like this idea. They want the basic needs of the life. Also there, people cannot find job because of the Iranian regime is wants to invest money in these wars. using these proxies. For example, Hezbollah in Lebanon, and by the way, Iran is trying to create new Hezbollahs also in Iraq, also in Syria, in Yemen. These are the Houthis. By the way, there is also cooperation between the Houthis to Hamas. Hamas is not having anything in Yemen, but cooperation with the Houthis. So Iran is driving also because of two factors. One is religious, because they wants to have a Shi'i crescent, Shi'i domination in the region. But I think, like you said before, that this is more also an economic factor. Also economic factor. Iran thinks that by establishing a huge Shi'i state from Iran through Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon, they will have an hegemony on the region, and they will manage to improve in the long run also its economy. Right now, look what happens now in Syria. Many people, members of the Iranian Revolution Guards, are taking over the houses of Sunni families who fled from Syria, and they transfer it to factories or to Khuza, religious houses for the Shiites. This is actually, we are witnessing in history to something very extraordinary of, I would say, replacing one ethnic community with another ethnic community. These Iranians are coming to Syria trying to have a new settlement in Syria. And they think that their proxies, Hezbollah and other ones, they will be their long arm to fulfill their agenda, to have hegemony in the region, to have economic prosperity in the long run, because then they can control natural sources in the region, oil, gas, etc. And they want also, Iran wants to reach to the Mediterranean Sea. So they are calculating their interest, how to achieve this interest. So they don't mind now to invest money in Hezbollah, because they think that in the long run it will be fruitful.
And I had a chance to speak with a friend of a friend on this same issue, which you just pointed out, that they want a Shia influence in the region. I am just not able to understand, if Iran wants a Shia influence in the region, why don't they support Azerbaijan? Why are they standing aside with Armenia? Azerbaijan is a Shia majority country. Whether they are, they say that they are a liberal country, but still the majority of the population is Shia, and Iran is not in good ties with Azerbaijan.
Right, it's too complicated, but Armenia is a good friend of Iran.
Yeah, Armenia is a good friend of Iran.
So Iran is preferring now to support its allies, even if it's not, even if it's a Christian, because they are interested that they will have a support in the diplomatic measure also. In the long run, also states that Iran is supporting. In the long run, Iran is having a dawah mechanism, not necessarily to convert everyone to the Shia, but having support in the Iranian regime. So because Armenia is supporting the Armenian regime, that's why supporting Armenia and not Azerbaijan. And Azerbaijan also is a friend of Israel and of Turkey.
Yeah. I have visited Iran last year. I have many friends in Iran. They are very good people. Iran is a very beautiful country. The Shia community there and Shia community in Pakistan are very loyal people with their country. Pakistani Shias are very loyal with their country. And Dr. Barak, what you just mentioned about the demographical change in population and in Syria, that is something which we as a nation, as a state, as a country, in principle, we oppose it because this is what we are protesting in UN and international forums, that India is doing same in Kashmir, and we don't uh, agree with this. We don't allow it to be happening. We are protesting. We are raising voices. Kashmiris are raising voices, and if same thing is taking place in Syria, and Iran is doing with Sunnis, so we will definitely condemn it on every level. I guess this is something ethically we are bound to condemn it. We oppose this action in Kashmir, Indian occupied Kashmir. So how can we allow, or how can we support this action in Syria, where they are changing the population ratio and number of people and number of community by replacing them and just capturing their household and things like that. This is not acceptable.
Look, it's Iran is not only doing is only in Syria. It's also in Yemen. Look what happens in Yemen. In Nigeria also, by the way, in Nigeria also Iran is interfering. Established Hezbollah in Nigeria. It's yeah. It's sad.
So technically, Hezbollah is not formal army of Iran, which is fighting everywhere for Iran.
Yes.
You want to say that?
Hezbollah is the proxy of Iran, fulfilling the agenda of Iran. So, and the evidence is that Hezbollah interfered in the civil war in Syria. Even Hezbollah members inside Lebanon said to Nasrallah, "You took a wrong decision. Why do we have to interfere in Syria? It can only damage to Hezbollah." But Nasrallah said, "Silence. I'm serving and loyal to the Wilayat Faqih, to the Khamenei." So
we have no problem with this concept of Vilayat Faqih. I guess no one has a problem with this concept of Vilayat Faqih until unless
no, there is a problem, but I think this is a theological issue. I'm not I'm familiar, but I don't think this is the issue. Most of the Shia in Lebanon, they think that the Wilayat Faqih is damaging the interest of the Shia community. Many Shia in Lebanon, they want to be a part of the national state of Lebanon. They don't want to be part of Iranian regime. They said and also the same thing in Iraq. Iraqi people, the Sistani, Ali Sistani, one of the prominent religious Shia scholars, said, "I don't want I don't want that Iran will interfere in Iraq. The Wilayat Faqih is damaging also the interest of the Iraqi Shiis. Why we have it?" And Musa Sadeh, one of his students, says, I am ready to live with coexistent with the Sunni, with Christian, with other sects. Iran is damaging us. Iran wants to promote its agenda and to cultivate the idea of Wilayat Faqih.
I remember last year in the month of the same time I was in these days I was in Iran, and I was supposed to travel to Baghdad from Iran, and we couldn't go Baghdad because there was huge processions that were going on against Iran, and I guess there was some attacks on Iranian embassy there in Baghdad. So the travel advisory was not to travel to Baghdad and Iraq. So we couldn't make it. I mean, we did not go to Iraq, unfortunately. And so I remember, yes, there is aggression against Iran in Iraq. People were aggressive and angry with Iraqi people. So I second your thought. Yes, there is a problem which I guess everyone needs to fix. I guess Iran should review its policies in the region. they should more focus on their health position, their economy, their diplomatic ties with neighbors and with the international community. And I guess the time is gone of proxies. Proxies are no more working anywhere. The world is changing now. It is difficult to have proxies anymore. Or in the coming days, it will be very difficult to have and operate proxies anywhere by anyone.
Yeah, you're right. But Iran is, it's continuing on, trying to find new chances how to expand its influence in the region. Also, I can mention the Iraqi-Iranian war, 10 years of war that left a trauma in the
Yeah.
collective memory of the Iranian people. So this is also another motivation for the Iranian regime to have an hegemony in the region. So yes, unfortunately, the proxies, all these organizations are only damaging the local people interest, the national states.
True, and we can easily gauge the pace of this proxy war because we not only we have seen these proxies in the form of TTP, Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, or the terrorist groups, but there was a long history of proxy wars of Shia and Sunni here in Pakistan for last 40, it's more than 42, 43 years now that Arab proxies and Irani proxies are fighting in Pakistan. So it is like both countries are watching a match, and Pakistan is not a battleground for them, it's a playground. And they are enjoying their proxy war inside Pakistan. And me, my nation, my country is suffering from that. We we are the only country in the world which has been suffered by these proxy wars and the terrorist activities the most. We have, like, our economy was almost uh, shaken, and we have, like, their losses of more than now $130 billion in last 20 years. Our tourism, we are such a beautiful and rich country, uh, but our tourism industry never grew just because of these proxy wars and the terrorist activities which took place in my country. It is unfortunate, and we have paid the price. So we know the suffering and we know the pain of these proxy wars. And I guess no Pakistani is in favor of these proxy wars, wherever these are taking place and whosoever is supporting
Yes, you are right. You know that Iran is also trying to recruit people from Afghanistan, Shia community from Afghanistan, also Pakistan, by the way, from Iraq, and send them to Syria to fight over there.
them. Mm.
So yeah, the proxy wars is never has a good ending.
Yeah.
It's
No. Dr. Barak, I know one thing. You fight the war. You fight the proxy war. You do what you want to do, but on the end of the day, you have to solve your problems on the table of negotiation. So why not now?
negotiations with.
Negotiations is the only way to solve
Yes,
any problem.
yeah, I agree.
Dialogue is the only way to go
Yes.
on, to move forward. So I don't know why people are talking about wars and why people are involving themselves in proxy wars. It is better to have negotiations. It is better to have dialogue. It is better to sit on table rather face one another. Rather facing one another in the battlefield, it is great idea to sit on a table in front of one another and talk about the issues. And when you start talking about the issues, there is no issue which cannot be resolved.
Yeah, I agree. It's this is what Israel did with the PLO negotiations, and
Yeah,
eventually there is a Palestinian Authority.
yeah,
Yes, negotiation can bring peaceful talks, can bring to good results.
yeah,
But
yeah.
if Hamas and other terrorist organizations using terrorists, then it's achieved the opposite results, and then Israelis
Yeah.
people they lose faith in this in the ability to bring peace to the region. And
Mm,
thanks God, the Israeli leadership changed the equation, changed the
mm,
reality when the Arab world now is waking
mm,
up, like
mm,
United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, North
mm,
Sudan, and there will be other countries that they realize that
mm,
terrorism and violence will bring only misery
mm,
and to to their own population,
mm,
and to have a good, and will cause a good it will cause a bad economy.
mm,
So
mm,
thanks God, we have now this peace. We have to
mm,
preserve it, to
mm,
strengthen the ties between, also by with the civilian society, not only with the
mm,
leadership, but with the
mm,
civilian society. And by this, then we can talk also on other things in
true.
diplomatic ways. And I think that by making peace with the Arab states, also with Pakistan, inshallah, so
Inshallah.
there we will be able also to help to the Palestinians, or
Yeah,
to promote other things.
for sure.
So,
For sure. We
negotiations
would
and
love
peaceful
that.
talks are yes.
Like personally, I would love to uh, serve the needy Palestinian uh, by living in the house of my Israeli friends.
Hmm.
That would be an opportunity for me. If we had good ties with Israel, we have diplomatic ties in Israel. So I will be going there, living in your house or Dr. Nancy's house, and together we can go and distribute medicine or books in the Palestinian students and the kids. So I agree with you. By having good relations, we will be having more opportunity to serve the needy people there.
Yes, and and then we can create a region that will be very rich with with good investments for the people, also promoting agriculture, water, everything, because today one of the problems is that there is not enough water in the region.
Yeah.
So Israel can also help in this matter, and now Israel send a delegation to north of Sudan to help them in this subject, how to promote water.
Mm.
So there are many fields that we can achieve together and to promote.
Inshallah. Inshallah. I'm thankful, Dr. Barak, for your time and for your inputs. This was our fifth session of our series,
Yeah.
and I hope that we will be having more sessions with more diverse topics, with more uh, issues to discuss. And I would like to have you with me to interview some of the intellectuals. We both can jointly interview them, and that will give us both a good opportunity to host a podcast jointly.
It's will be my honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Barak. Hope to see you soon.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.